Next of kin notified lane. 3 sings 5 notes no one else hears unless they work there. It's a clipped little melody, like a radio jingle pared down to the bone. The tone is older than the store, I think. Somebody set it when the cases still smelled like factory paint, and the night crew moved pallets around by hand for fun. I tap my fingers to it sometimes. It gives me something to work against that isn't time. Our place is called Hometown Market in the circular, though the sign out by the road lost the "own" in a storm and never got it back. Home Market. At dusk, the missing letters show up as ghost adhesive when the angle is right. I've been here since they cut the ribbon. The opening day picture is in the break room under plastic. The mayor posing with our district manager, both of them doing that open-mouthed smile you do for cameras. My hair slicked back more than it usually is, my apron so new it squeaked. There's a date stamped under the photo like an expiration. The punch clock still remembers my first minute, even if I don't. The store smells like Freon and coffee, and the ghost of fried chicken the deli used to do before the oil court, and everyone agreed we could live without it. The floors are a fake stone that squeaks under certain rubber soles and stays slick long after mopping. In winter, the entry mat takes on a wet wool animal smell that feels more honest than any deodorized thing. The big coolers whisper. The walk-in moans, but the tech says that just the check valve, remembering when it was new. The scanner on lane 3 reads most things clean: cereal, milk, off-brand dish soap in a bottle that looks like a geometry lesson. The red net throws its light across the glass, and the field dances and settles the way a nurse's hand does when she has done sticking you. 5 notes, a chime, a number on the screen, and then there you are again. I like a steady thing. It's my nature. If you've got a job where objects move and you make the objects mean money, steadiness becomes a form of politeness. At noon, on a Wednesday with a sky like a piece of old paper, a grey can rolled across the glass and showed me a UPC code so crisp it looked proud to be read. The label was a field and a barn, in the way companies draw fields and barns to be generic. The red made its grid. The notes chimed. The screen blinked like it swallowed a word it wanted to say, and then filled with a string that made no sense to my head or my hands. Human remains, recall. Where the price should sit there was nothing. The belt stopped itself with a polite cough. The can left a cold ring on the rubber mat, colder than cans get back in dry stock, colder even than the ones stored too near the produce cooler exhaust. It wasn't sweat. It was a little frost ghost that took a breath and then died. I keyed the numbers in by hand because if a machine surprises you, you show it you know how to be a person. Same result. The customer's cart held 12 of the same label, all snugged corner to corner like they'd traveled that way since the factory. I tried a second can. The grid flashed and settled, and the same line repeated, neat as a stamp that's already inked. The register printed anyway. I didn't hear the 5 notes. It felt like the scanner had cleared its throat to speak in a different language. The receipt spooled out with nothing but recall language and a lot number I didn't recognize, laid out down the length of it in patient type that made me think of mortgage papers, or the little font they use on grave markers when someone wants to say more than a stone will allow. Do I still get them? The customer asked, eyes on the lane light that says open like it could answer. That's a no sale, I said, and slid the cans to the side the way you move something that might be clean or might not. Same caution either way. Company says isolate, box, log, vendor pickup. He stared at me in the way people stare at the person who isn't an authority, but who is next to an authority-shaped thing. Soup, he said. Label says so, I said. Screen says it isn't. He shrugged like a man who has had other days and put his other items back in his cart in a way that told me the soup had been his plan for the week. Cans clanked with a hard bell. I bagged shampoo and light bulbs and pasta and the kind of coffee that writes its own adjectives. and he slid off into the whitened noon in shoes that had the sort of squeak our floor steals from them. Backroom protocol, which I've known long enough that my hand reaches for the forms before I know what I mean to write. Isolate, box, log. The backroom is warm even in winter, the air thick because the walk-in radiates what it takes. The mop bucket lives back there, and the handle is cold in a way that makes palm lines remember where they came from. I stacked the grey cans on a dolly, lids up so dates show, because that is how we do it when we need to show dates to a person who want to remove the lids. The lot code on the bottom was a string of numbers with a slant, I knew. Everything you see a lot of develops a posture. When I flipped the next can, the code aligned with the first, and if you tilted your head, you could make it resolve into a sentence that had simply not had its spaces added. If you read enough numbers, they turn into weather. This turned into a date I recognized from the framed order in the break room. The day we opened. The time underneath matched when my punch card says I started, down to the minute, not the hour, the minute. I want you to know I measured my breath. I want you to know I set the dolly brakes and stepped away with deliberateness and counted freezer fans to 10. Work teaches you how to walk your mind through a process that keeps your hands from catching. I wrote the instructions on the box with the black marker we only pretend to cap. Recall, hold, vendor pickup. I signed the form with a line I could recognize later. The box tape shushed its sound across cardboard. Tape always sounds like a decision that doesn't need your agreement. By dinner, the return counter had 4 boxes, brown tape around them tight enough to make the cardboard round its edges. The ones with a pine tree printed on the side smelled faintly like sap when you got close, but that might have been the air freshener in the staff bathroom trying to die. The intercom chirped its polite attention tone, and I heard my own voice in it tell the name of a vendor nobody had bothered to memorize beyond the representative S first name, and then it chirped again and laid quiet on the ceiling. An unmarked box truck rolled to the dock after close. The driver wore gloves the exact grey of our cans. The gloves had a smoothness like they'd been rubbed with something that wants to be clean but will not wash a thing. He had the build of a person who could pick up any box you asked him to and set it in a place you both agreed on. The dock light turned him yellow the way dock lights do. He held a tablet that faced him and never faced me. He didn't sign the way drivers sign when they want to show they exist. He nodded, because nodding is a language that doesn't leave a mark. Manifest, I said, and kept my voice neutral so it could apply to any person. He nodded again, and when I printed the manifest, a new line came up under product that hadn't been there when the printer sung its little pre-warm. One name only, our town, spelled the way the map spells it and the way we don't. Then my own, no last initial, my full name. The register settled itself after a fuss, the way laundry does after you shake it once. The scanner S red grid cast on my shirt. The glass had picked up enough glare from the ceiling that my chest shone in it. I looked down, not at myself, but at the red that had made myself louder. Bag separately, the receipt said, next of kin notified. There are jokes you're allowed to make in a grocery store. Some are older than me. If a carton of eggs goes down, someone will say, that'll be the new scrambled egg size. And everyone will smile because it keeps the sound of breaking from being the only language the morning speaks. There are things you can never say. Body, bone, blood. If you must, if a top jar comes down and a shard nicks you, you call it red. You got a little red on you, we say. And then we use the spray and the paper towels we keep under every register, and the spritz sounds like a small life. I did not show the receipt to anyone. I folded it and put it in the breast pocket of my apron where the loyalty sign-up cards go to be forgotten. I wasn't afraid, not then. Afraid is too big a word for a person to carry in a big bright room while music that has never been popular fills up places inside you. It was more like when you carry something sloshy and you can feel the weight yet, but you anticipate it tipping. Thursdays we get 4 deliveries: bread, dairy, dry stock, and a small pallet that belongs to the third-party pharmacy outpost we pretend is ours when people want to yell at someone. My boss, who is called Jana and calls her own hair fine to the point of discouragement, was late because her kid has a stomach that doesn't take instruction and no one to hand him to in the morning. I ran the floor with the skeleton crew you get after cold weeks, when everybody see car battery acts like a coin flip. By 9, I'd stopped trying to prove the grey cans weren't an event. A man came through with his cart loaded like a bunker, and each can he tossed on my belt spun until it found its balance. The screen gave me the line. The belt halted the way a friend touches your arm when you're saying something too fast. I locked that lane out and moved to the next one, apologizing with my mouth while my hands kept their habits. A woman bought only ice and cigarettes and asked me for that paper that isn't tea-free, meaning a prepaid cell phone card. Lane 4's scanner had a nick in the glass from a can of yams someone had thrown in a February when the world was in the middle of telling us no again. Lane 4 had thoughts about the grey cans too. The same line, the same quiet refusal to give a price. I took a can to the self-check like I could teach the machines to disagree with each other, and it did me the favor of showing the issue wasn't Lane 3's personality. Human remains, recall, the little screen said in the small font that wants not to be seen from a distance. A man in a ball cap swiped a bag of onions, and the machine told him to call the attendant because the weight in his bagged area did not match the list. He sighed, and I cleared the light for him and handed him his receipt that read like a song that repeats its chorus, just a bit too much. Back room again. Another box, another careful brush of the marker. My handwriting slanted the way it always has since the day in 4th grade when a teacher I won T-name told me, "Your letters lean like you do when you don T want to be in a picture." The dolly made a small rubber groan when I tilted it back. I am inside my own sounds more than usual. The boxes sat with the grammar of people who don't know if they re-invited to the room and don't want to ask. We have a feedback phone that hangs on a nail in the office. The cord warms itself around the plastic like it's nesting. District calls once a week to ask what we need that isn't on the order form. "Hours," Jana says, and laughs a little like it's a new joke. That afternoon I used the phone and pressed the number for recalls, because sometimes you need to hear a human voice deliver their training like a prayer sheet. "Recalls department," someone said, voice like a smile that wanted to be there. He could have been anyone. "Hi," I said. "We're getting an error on canned soup when we scan. It halts the belt. The line is human remains, recall." That's the language given. Saying it out loud put a shape around it. I could feel the top of my lungs with my shirt. He did a sound that meant he was typing. He asked for the lot number and the flavor name on the label and the size. I gave him the numbers and letters the can gave me. He asked me to repeat them, and the repetition rounded my mouth in a way that warmed my face. He said he would check against active advisories. "Nothing hits," he said after a minute. "Nothing states the product text you're seeing. Could be an internal code accidentally surfacing, or it could be vendor side. We can issue an internal hold, box and label, keep it dock for pickup." "That's what we're doing," I said. "Good," he said. "I'm making a note." He did not ask where we were. The caller ID tells them, or it doesn't. If I were telling this to someone else, if I were trying to make the story look like it knew how it would end, I'd say I felt the first crack then. But the truth is, small cracks hide inside bigger ones, and you learn to live among them. There's a noise in the back office ceiling, like a foot that takes and holds a tone. There's a compressor that ticks like the second hand in a hall clock. There are noises you accept because the aisles are bright and the open hours are long, and because if you flinch every time things hum, you will never finish sweeping. I tried to eat my lunch. The apple I cut with the box knife had a grain of grit in the flesh that made my teeth wince. The chips I dumped into a bowl had the taste of cardboard that thinks it's corn. The coffee found my stomach and asked what it had done to deserve this. The picture in the break room of the ribbon cutting had shifted in its frame and showed a white sliver of wall that hadn't been there yesterday. I corrected it because you don't let wall show where picture is meant to be. Small order, small mercy. On Friday, the snow melted enough to reveal the low places we always forget are low. The river that doesn't deserve the name turned brown and active, and the drainage ditch on the side lot made a sucking sound when it remembered its job. A boil order went up for the south end, which didn't include us, but included some of our regulars who walked through our doors with a look that asked me to make water behave. We put boil water signs on the end caps with the discount pots. We ordered more jugs than we anyway were allowed. More cans came in. They have a way of doing that. Some are too cheap not to buy, and some are the comfort of labels that will be with you when the week gets thin. I got practiced with the motion. The line sings, the belt stops you lift the can with a gentle thumb and forefinger like it never had a weight. You stack it on the recall box that's better than it was at lunch. You tape it tight, you write your mark. I printed the manifest forms fresh to see if the extra line was a one-time embarrassment the printer had put on. It wasn't. My name sat on the page like a person seated who has chosen the aisle so he can leave early if he wants. Our town's name above it took on the precision of obituaries and wedding announcements. When I slept that night, if you count the kind where you wake at the distant slam of a dumpster lid, and stand in the bathroom with the light off to see if the mirror has your shape, I dreamed of belts. Not the leather kind with holes, but the rubber that runs the lanes with the texture on it. They moved whether I wanted them to. I stood at lane 3 with nothing on it, and the belt ran, and the 5 notes played and nothing came out the other end. It should tell you something that this did not strike me as bad. It felt productive. Then the belt stopped, and the red lighted grid pressed itself on my chest in the shape of a sash. Saturday, a man attempted to return 24 cans of the same grey label. Returns are their own art. You learn the face that means, my wife sent me, and the one that means, let S pretend my mistake is your policy. He set the 2 flats on the counter like a gift. The codes matched the ones I had boxed. Our sign says, no receipts on food returns, but that's not entirely true. We write it so that we can point to a reason to say no to what we would say no to anyway. I scanned one. The screen sighed into the line. I scanned another. Same, he cleared his throat. Bad lot, I said, as companies pulling it. Bad how, he said. I don't have that detail, I said. We can refund. You don't want to feed your family something that'll make the news for the wrong reasons. He looked at me in the way men look when they are deciding whether to trust another man or trust the story they will tell at home about how the world is petty. I'll take cash, he said. We don't do cash after 60 days. We did cash. It felt like giving him evacuation money. He used it to buy hot dogs and buns and a jar of yellow mustard we keep on the highest shelf, because if you need it, you can stretch, and bought nothing that needed cooking water. That night, the truck backed down the dock slower than usual. The driver wore the same grey gloves, or if he didn't, then grey is the only colour I can see on certain evenings. He nodded. The cough of his diesel made the dock door flutter, and the flutter knocked a little dust off the top of the bolted light that doesn't belong to our store. It is the kind the landlord puts in because nobody can complain about light they didn't ask for. The dust came down in a pattern that remind me of lines you draw when you want to show people how signal spreads from a tower. That pattern made me think of the scanner's red grid in the dark. I shook my head because I could feel myself becoming a person who connects what isn't there. Jana came in Monday with a pen tucked through her hair and her eyes 3 days older than Friday. Slick roads by the green houses, she said, which is what the other side of town calls the stretch where wind goes to practice. Soup recall continues, I said. Soup, she said, and loved the word and hated it at the same time for being what it was. I'll email it. I'll email until they give me an answer I can put on a sign. She tried our corporate. She tried a vendor address that says it's monitored. She tried the recall number posted on a board near the time clock. The phone made the sound of calls placed into rooms where machines answer for people. Press 1, they said, and we did. Hold, they said, and we did. The music they give you on hold is a mannequin version of a song about bridges. Names are always generic until you need them to be specific, and then they refuse to come. 2 bags of dog food got tagged as restricted sale by request only when someone higher up decided to be complicated. A new code on cigarettes told the machine it couldn't sell them to anyone. Under the age of a birthday, the screen would calculate and refuse. 3 gallons of milk went sour in a stack by the cooler when the fan pushed air the wrong way for an hour. The day arranged its small discomforts in a list that could be mistaken for a god. The receipt in my apron pocket got a softness like a washcloth. Paper has a way of learning skin. When I pulled it out at home to look at the lot number, the ink had transferred itself in duplicate, backward on the inside crease. If you had held it up to a mirror, you'd have seen a clean record. I didn't get that far. I ran my thumb down the line where my name sat under product, and the friction heat made a smell I couldn't place. It wasn't paper burn. It wasn't the smell of thermal printers when they're tired. It wasn't the smell of anything in our place or out in the town. It was like a breath held too long, then the first air. Tuesday morning, the freezer did its panic beep at 5. We live with that beep. It means the door is open a hair, or the thermostat wants attention, or the sensor decided it needed to remind the store it exists. The beep is a polite metronome you can fold your thoughts into if you're desperate. It also moves into your skull and lives there. We wore our coats for 3 hours as we unloaded because the walk-in pop never goes back to normal the day after the day it misbehaves. The scanner refused the grey cans in our coats and in just shirts, the way weather refuses your plans, no matter your sleeve length. A woman I see twice a week came through with a list little as her palm and a pile of cans tight as a wall. She smiled at me with an effort. I hit the first one, made my hands gentle. The belt stopped and the line came. She read it before I could do anything to keep it from her. "Oh," she said, like something had gone from abstract to house in her head. "Oh, we have to pull them," I said. "We can give you credit." She put her hand around herself like an old sweater. "My husband heats these," she said. "Not because we don't have a stove. He says it's just the right size of hunger." She laughed once to show me she was aware of herself. "He'll have to want something else." "We have broth on sale," I said. "We can get you other things." She looked at me with eyes that made me think of elderly dogs. It wasn't tea about what the eyes could see. It was about who could be seen through them. "We aren't other people," she said. "We'll try." I put the grey cans on the dolly with more carefulness than they needed, because that is how you show a person that you have heard them. The lot code pattern insisted. I didn't want to see it, and I saw it anyway. It angled itself at the world like writing does when you want it to look like you. It ended with the minute my card gave me when I'd clocked in. The week folded around that minute in a way that made my chest remember steps. Sleep shortened. Appetite went from small to absent, and then clattered back as an interest in toast. The noises at work learned my attention like a pet. The intercom chirp made me jump because it sounded like something thinking. The scanner notes I used to like got under my skin and built a nest. When I took a shower, the sound of the water hitting the curtain was a version of the receipt spooling. My hands started to smell like the tape, even when I wasn't touching it. The glue smell that belongs to boxes, and to bandages, and to the backs of stickers kids want. A line formed under the sign that says customer service the next afternoon, and half of them had grey cans in their arms. We wrote returns with our pens that never die, and put the cans in boxes that stop belonging to anything else. I wrote my initials on the tape because you do that when you want to tell future you who had the pen. The driver came early and nodded and took, and the trailer echoed as things moved in it, that hollow barrel sound trailers always have. A line appeared at the bottom of the manifest that said, "Bag separately," and under it, in the same tidy font that might be used for directions to a park, "Next of kin notified." I might have laughed. I might have made the sound we make to show each other we're not ruled by machines. I might have looked at the air where the driver ES face was and thought I could sew myself to reality with a joke like, "If I am dead, give me one day off that isn't Sunday." I didn't. I did the thing we do when we can't decide where to put our weight. I put one hand in my apron pocket and held onto the receipt until the heat of my hands made the letters softer than they had any right to be. Jana noticed me noticing things. "You eating?" she asked without looking up from the order she was entering, a number at a time, the way people who come to the party late do, loudly enough to be seen. "Toast," I said. "You drink water," she said, and handed me a plastic bottle that had sat on the desk too near the heater and tasted like the room. A man came in at 8 with a clipboard and the kind of jacket that pretends to hide what it is. He had a badge that said something general about quality. He asked for me by name. My name is not rare enough for comfort and not common enough to hide in. He watched the scanner and wrote down what it said without writing down the way it said it. He wanted to see a can. I couldn't give him one because they were in boxes, and the boxes wore their tape too tight to undo for the sake of a stranger's curiosity. He stood at the end of the lane and made a note about non-scored lids, which I assume is something that matters in a world where you prefer precise failures. "We had a message," I said, because I wanted him to see we weren't pretending this away. "Messages happen," he said, and smiled while not meeting me. "We can silence them." After he left, the monitor on the side of the office that shows the camera feed flashed grey, then clear. In the grey, the aisles pooled and made their own geography. The door to the back looked like a road. The dock looked like an end. I blinked, and then everything went back to being bright and dumb. Wednesday brought a different kind of box. It wasn't ours. It came on a pallet with 96 cases of cereal that will never stop being $2 off. Because if they were, we'd explain to 20 people a day why their breakfast got expensive. The box was tall, narrow, a little too neat. The label said "Returns," "Emergency," and had our address printed clean without the "own." In smaller text where you'd put an order number was a line of letters and numbers mixed that resembled nothing I'd seen on manifests. If I tilted my head, I could feel a meaning press against my ear, but I couldn't bring it into the store. I cut it open with the box knife, and inside there was a stack of folded bags the color of brown paper before it makes itself to a bag, and inside that a handful of bracelets to tag returned items. The bracelets were gray in the way gloves are gray. The instruction sheet said, "Bag individually, list names if available, store in cool dark place, vendor to collect." There was a line drawn in the picture of a store where the cool dark place should be. The line pointed to the loading dock, and under it was the word staging. We don't stage back there. We never have. The landlord says there's an insurance thing and that rats are a possibility, and that staging is a word people use when they don't want to call something what it is, which is storage. I took the bracelets out and put them in a drawer and shut the drawer because the room felt colder with them out. The lights hummed in a lower key I'd never heard them choose. The mop bucket was where it had been for years, and still it took me a minute to recognize it as the concrete thing it was, and not a picture someone had drawn to remind me. On Thursday, our water line in the hallway behind frozen foods shook itself, and the copper thudded once, twice. I have loved that noise, always. It tells you the line will take the day. This time, the thud came with a small after voice, like when you stick a glass back in the cupboard and it taps another. A fine mist lifted from the little seam in the elbow and made a brief rainbow in the fluorescent light. I set a bucket because that's what you do until a man with a belt comes. I stood and watched the drops fall, and the regularity of it was so good that I let myself feel better for 1 minute. A woman in a vest that convinced no one she was a health official walked the aisles making notes. She checked the dates on the milk. She pressed her hand to the glass of the deli case that holds cold cuts and the orange things we call cheese. She asked to see a manager. Jana came out from the office with a printout of our last inspection in a plastic sleeve. The woman nodded and wrote nothing that looked like a pass or a fail. The woman stood by a case end cap where I had put those discount pots and read the boil notice like it had been written for her. "I've never seen that language," she said to no one in particular. "We'll let you know." At 9 that night, we closed an hour early because the weather had decided to be ugly on a schedule. The closures board at City put up a notice about truck routes restricted for weight. I went down to swap out the end of day, and the receipt printer caught and spit a full tongue of paper. The strip had nothing but lines of my name broken by our town S name, and then a little double arrow that points left. The font's patience got to me. I wanted to find the person whose job it was to design letters that could be read by sad people under bad light. I wanted to ask them what they learned doing it. I drove the short way home because you pick roads like you pick battles. The streetlights didn't know whether to go on. Cars took their time and their place. The radio picked up a station from 2 counties over and gave me what sounded like the afterlife of a baseball game. Shadows sit heavy in the passenger seat some nights. I made sure it was my coat and a stack of returns on the seat and not anything that needed a name. My apartment is 3 rooms and a bathroom with a fan that insists on joining the conversation. The fridge hums a note that forgives. The light over the sink takes an extra second like it's thinking about it. I keep towels folded in a way my mother would recognize. She would not approve of my knives in a drawer. She would say they need a block. The drawers make them dull, and life is too short to live around dull knives. The receipt I'd carried made its way from my pocket to the magnet on the fridge that holds pizza coupons, and the picture of my nephew in a jacket with a badge from a field trip to the firehouse. The magnet is a tiny, fake pepper. The darkness in the apartment felt bigger than it had any reason to be, so I turned on the bathroom light to reduce it by a door's width. Sleep became a set of appointments I missed and rescheduled with the same level of apology. I closed my eyes, and the 5 notes from the scanner sounded like a lullaby for cages. I opened them, and the numbers on the lot codes lined up with corners of the ceiling that had no reason to attract anything. I turned on the TV to drown the hums, and the TV gave me faces that moved mouths at news I could not hold. Friday, it broke in a small way. A man came with 3 cans of grey and said, "Price check?" like the world could be built out of those words. I scanned one because the habit is bigger than any rules I set for myself. The line, the halt. He looked at it, and then he looked at me. I reached for the can to put it on the dolly and felt a chill in the palm of my hand. Not cold, not the absence of heat. Something like when you pick up a rock from the river and it holds the shape of the water in your skin. The can left its cold ring on the black belt, and the ring did not go away when it should. "Price check," he said again, and made it into a joke that wanted me to help. "I can't sell it," I said. "It's under hold. I'll make you right." "What's wrong with it?" he said. The bell ticked once like it had a tooth missing. "Do you know the airs of meat on a summer day? We never sell that. Our place holds its smell. We know to move things fast when the air changes." This wasn't that. It was a suggestion of metal, not metal, of storage, not time, of breath, not person. The screen threw the line 1 beat late, and the letters landed like they had rehearsed without me. "That line," I said, pointing. "I'm sorry." He watched my finger as if it could be a person with its own responsibilities. He took his other items, he nodded, he left without saying thank you, because sometimes the word isn't tea available in the world you have to walk in. I boxed 3 pallets worth by lunch. The driver with the grey gloves, I've decided now he's the same man, nodded as he always does. He gestured to a place on the dock near the left wall, and I set the newest boxes there because sometimes you give in to other people's maps and sometimes you enforce your own. He did not speak. The air behind him shifted with the heat of the truck. In that way you only notice on afternoons when the weather is trying to forget winter. The manifest had added a caution under bag separately. It said, "Consider labeling contents." There was a blank line for contents. I wrote canned goods and felt foolish. I wrote soup and crossed it out because my hand didn't want that word. I wrote grey, and then, because the black marker forgets shame, I wrote my own name again next to the one the form had given me. Saturday, the district manager visited in a jacket that couldn't decide if it wanted to be a coat. He smelled like the inside of his car. He said all the words you say into spaces like ours. Containment, procedures, will escalate, vendors. His phone never left his hand. He put it down twice, as if to show me he can. The charger was a snake warming itself on the desk. "They'll pick up on schedule," he said. "No angle for refunds. We make it into store credit." "People need money," I said. "We are money," he said. And when he heard what he sounded like, he smiled to soften it. "For these purposes. People need money. People also need seriousness from other people, and I had none to offer anyone that day. I could only give them my process: scan, stop, move, tape, write. There are worse lives. On Sunday, I found the receipt in my pocket, though I had left it on the fridge. The magnet was on the floor under the fridge, with a dust bead stuck to it like hair. I looked at the paper and the letters had softened more. The lot number had bled a little around its edges, like it had had to go too fast for a moment to make space. I took it back and put it under the pepper and adjusted the corners and stood there like that would change something about the way a day sits in a person. The call came at 6 a.m. out of a phone that was not my phone. It came from the store, which was a story in itself, because the store calls only to tell you a key broke or a cooler gave out or the night guy failed to show and the morning guy is sleeping through being the morning guy. It was Jana. "Don't freak," she said. "County wants a meeting here. They're using us as a spot because we've got the space. They're saying voluntary. They're saying advisory, like it's evidence." "Meeting about what?" I said, and knew the answer didn't matter. "Just come," she said. "Wear your name tag. They get huffy when we look like citizens." In the vestibule, where the carts clacked their small complaint, the county had set up a table with a fabric cover that said something general about wellness. A young man handed out papers to anyone who looked at him. The heading said, "Consumer Advisory," and the body said nothing I could use. It had a picture of a can with an X through it. And the can in the drawing looked like ours, because all cans do on paper. The woman in the vest that may or may not have made her official stood by, touching the papers lightly, as if she were checking that they were still there. They asked for my name. I gave it because I give it to strangers who ask me to write it on a sticker. A man with a pinched nose wrote it on a list with other names I recognized. Customers, co-workers, a math teacher from the high school who buys 3 oranges every Sunday. He put a star next to mine without looking at me the way a machine puts content into a field without thinking about what that field might be. "We appreciate your partnership," he said. "We're keeping an eye on the situation. We'll issue a press release when we know what we can say without being wrong." He said, "We, the way you do when you want a person to hear a group and not a person." He said wrong, like a thing that eats. By noon, the grey cans were a rumor that had turned practical. People brought them in a bag that had also held their sandwich. People brought them like confession. People kept them under their stroller and parked a stroller and a remorse next to my lane. Kids asked their parents what was wrong with the soup, and some parents said, "Nothing, it's a mistake." And some said, "It's not safe." And these are the two kinds of people we have here, and they are both telling their truth. I made the boxes into a wall next to the dock where the driver had gestured, and as I did, I felt the left-hand wall of the dock doing what walls do. It held the day up. The bricks were old and smooth from hands that have touched them under every weather the place has known, which is 3 we call by name and 1 we pretend is new every time. There was water in the mortar from a leak somewhere, and it had left a darker line in the lower courses. If you looked at it without thinking this was a line of water, it was a tally. The truck didn't come Sunday. No driver with gloves. Monday it came twice. The second time, the driver brought a second person in the passenger seat. I could not say if it was a man or a woman, because the glass and the light at that angle, and my brain not deciding. They didn't look at me. They looked at the left-hand wall. The driver nodded at me once, and the passenger nodded at the wall like we were the same. The forms changed on Tuesday. The blank line that had said contents now had lines under it for description, and under that, a line for condition. I didn't love that. Everything is the condition something was in at some other time. I wrote words that people have already agreed to, and no one will object to. Closed cans, sealed. The pen pressed deeper than it had any reason to. On Wednesday morning, when the sky felt too high and the air had a temperature that wanted to suggest confidence to you, and failed, I pressed one of the grey bracelets from the returns box around my wrist and then took it off after it said a noise against my skin I didn't understand. It made me think of how we tag hams at holiday with a label that looks like a joke until you see 3 of them. I put the bracelet back under the counter. It made a sound down there like a bag of coins. At 10, a customer brought a can not grey. The label was green. The UPC different enough that if I were the kind of person who liked to say good, I would have said it. The scanner gave me the 5 notes, as if telling me time still moves. The screen did its work and then flashed the new line that had become the day in a way I was not ready for. Human remains. Recall. It said it to the green label. It said it with the same neatness. The price field kept its emptiness. The belt gave me that small cough again, like a warning that becomes a habit. I pulled the can from the belt and I put it on the dolly, and the label slid under my hand and the skin on my palm prickled with the kind of sweat you get when the air is missing. The back room felt like an extra person had walked in and then left. The mop bucket had rolled an inch by itself because a pallet had nudged it, and I had not seen it happen. I could feel the day looking at me, the way a person looks at a person they are trying not to accuse. The green cans filled a new box. The manifest recognized them as grey. It didn't matter what color. The letters held. The vendor pickup sheet grew a list under names notified that included 3 I recognized. A cashier who worked the winter and went back to class. A school board member who buys the small bottles of dish soap because the big one never gets used before it turns and mine. I slept like a person who had been asked not to for a while and managed anyway. I woke with the receipt under my cheek because I dreamed I was at work and the 5 notes played in a different key, and it turned out the sound was the fan in the bathroom. The pepper magnet lay face down on the rug with its paint worn off in a place that told you it had done its share. Thursday, the power blipped. The store lights went black and then came back in their own staircase, aisle by aisle, like a procession refuses to be interrupted. The scanner grid blinked and turned back on. The lanes gave their little reset coughs. The belts twitched and fell still. The receipt printers whirred and resumed their waiting. Lane 3 tested itself. I have loved Lane 3. On good days, it's mine. On bad days, I act like I don't have favorites. I put a can on the glass by way of asking if we were still ourselves. The 5 notes played out of order, and then the screen gave me the line with my name under it in a place I had not seen it before. It sat under the product, in a slot where a coupon would go, a small box of text with a border so clean it felt like someone had photographed a border and pasted it there. The driver came noon sharp, and this time he handed me a paper and asked me to sign. It had a line for releasing manager. I wrote my name and did not recognize my handwriting. He took the paper back and I felt a little colder. He turned and I saw that his gloves, which I have been calling grey because that is what I could call them, had a texture like a can lid rubbed so many times that it has become a different material. He brushed a hand against the left-hand wall of the dock. The glove made no sound. In the bathroom later, I looked at the mirror and tried to see a person who had nothing to do with what was happening. I held my wrist and imagined a bracelet there. I pressed my thumb into the meat between my index finger and my thumb until I had a small white star and then a print in red that came back the way memory does after a pause. The driver came at close. 2 pickups in one day. The passenger was driving and the driver sat in the passenger's place. They rolled down the window and the air turned the temperature of the inside of a refrigerator you haven't heat opened for an hour. He nodded at the wall again. My left hand hurt from where I'd pressed it. I thought of the student we hired in August who said when she handed me her W4 that she never knew the difference between right and right. She's gone now. It's January. Kids survive this place by leaving it. By Friday, the line broke out beyond the cans. We had a packaged salad that the machine refused to price, telling me the recall code and halting the belt. We had a frozen loaf of bread that made the register show me the line and asked me to please key the special handling code for bagging. A man brought a package of deli ham with a sticker that told me a person had put it on there with care and wept when I put it on the dolly. It wasn't the ham. He worked on the cold side of the river, and the place had told him his job would be back in 2 months, which means not soon enough to use as an answer for a person at home who needs days to be numbers that can be multiplied. I took the ham and the smell of it said nothing about bodies. It said salt. It said smoked. It said when people say remains, they might mean a kind of math. The county posted a second advisory and printed it on smaller paper. Specific lot numbers only, it said, and then it listed numbers that had no relationship to the numbers we had on our boxes. The line on our screen did not read those numbers to find itself. It read us. I could feel it. There are days you know where your weight is without looking. There are days you know some other thing knows it too. Saturday afternoon, a box came down the line with no one touching it. Someone had placed it at the end of the returns counter and it had traveled. The belt itself had moved it. I hit the stop with my palm and the button tried to be a rock. The box had the weight of many little things that do not mind each other laying on them. I cut it open. Inside were bracelets, a stack of them, and a single printed card with a single line. Apply at source. That's the language someone used. I put the lid back on because some words need a lid. I put the box under the counter and shut the door as if closing it would press a seal on the air. I used to say I liked this job because it kept the world simple. You make money move, you give someone food, you look them in the eye enough that you both feel witnessed in an impersonal way that keeps heat out of a day. Heat isn't always welcome. This didn't have heat. It had a temperature you'd call in range if you had a reason to call it anything. Sunday night, I dreamed the dock wall had a seam and I could open it with my box knife. The cut I made was so neat I was proud of it. When the wall swung open, the room behind was filled with boxes, all labeled with a name that wasn't mine. They smelled like clay. There were bracelets on the floor in a tangle. When I woke, it took me a second to find my hands. In that second, the room rearranged its furniture ideas and chose one that put the chair against the window and the table under the clock and the lamp on the floor, where lamps don to belong. Monday morning, a woman I don't know called me by my name in the aisle, where we put the seasonal candy that no one wants, but everyone feels consoled by seeing. They're saying there's a list, she said. We're on it. We're on a lot of lists, I said, and meant to ease her out of this with the savior of cliches. The list has names, she said. You're past the end of it. I've been past the end of worse, I said, which is the kind of brag you allow yourself when the person in front of you needs to be told that you are a structure they can rest a bag on. She looked at my hand. I looked at it too. There was a grey line around the wrist where the bracelets had sat for a minute when I tried one on. The skin there had adopted the memory of a pressure, not bruise, not dirt, a thought in skin. Better drink water, I said, and she smiled because someone has to offer a theory of the day, and I had, so she took hers. By afternoon, the river had started to make a sound, like a person whose nose is trying to decide whether to be bothered. The town put up a sawhorse with a flashing light down at the low crossing, and the sawhorse did its best imitation of authority, while nobody looked at it until it failed to blink for a minute, which is when they noticed. We got a call from the pharmacy outpost asking if we had any masks stored we could sell. That took me back, 2 years back, to the time of forgetting people's face shapes. I said we did not, and we did. They were above the office, 20 to a pack with elastic that snapped the third time. I did not bring them down. That night the driver came late, passed close. The passenger, the one who drove before, was alone in the cab and left it running like it had a reason to breathe. He or she, this still matters to the part of my brain that wants to bin everything, got out and walked to the wall. They put a hand on it. No glove. I could see the skin lay itself flat and take the brick in like information. The hand stayed a second and then moved down. It took time, a path. When the hand was done, the brick had darkened in a shape that made me think not of hands, but of maps. Manifest, I said, because I always say it. The word keeps me in place. They nodded toward the printer like it had some volition, and then went back to the truck and leaned 2 forearms on the door. The manifest printed itself like it had wanted to be brought up. The paper warmed my fingers. Under product, under our town, my name again. Under notes, the line I had tried to persuade into meaning something else. Bag, separately, next of kin, notified. A new line had appeared under that in little letters. If at source, tag directly. I put the paper down. I reached into the returns box and brought up a grey bracelet and held it. The plastic warmed to my hand. The thing I cannot tell you without sounding odd is that the bracelet had weight. It did not have an hour before. It had its own gravity. It did not want to fall. I set it on the counter and it stayed. In the morning, I walked to work along the back road and saw the place where the truck had backed in last night. There were 2 marks on the pavement from the tires, and between them a low, dark oval where the exhaust had pooled a little and sunk. That's not a thing I've seen before. I put my foot in the oval and could feel cold coming up through my shoe. I stepped out of it, and that was the first time I admitted to myself that the categories were shifting. Not ghost, not haunted, not even wrong, just that the air had picked something up it wanted to hold on to. I stopped eating eggs. I don't know when that happened. Maybe when the customer had asked me about the list, maybe when the ham moved. Bread with butter and a banana that had bruised under its own skin was the day. Coffee returned to me, which I deserved and didn't. At 9, the head of produce called me to the back because the scale where they weigh cabbage and handwrite a PLU had decided the cabbage had no weight. The screen told me remains, recall. The word was smaller, or my eyes made it so. We put the cabbage in the box with the grey cans. The word looked foolish for a second. The day, being the day, let me have that, and then kept going. The music they give us to pretend we are mainlining a good time while we decide which mustard is lowest in price does not include silence. Between songs, there is something like weather. The overhead speakers breathed once and gave up a whisper that made me think of lists. It wasn't an announcement. It was a rehearsal. It went away. A boy stood up on the end of my lane and watched me for a long time. He was the kind who knows what adults look like when they lie and expects it. His mother replaced her lipstick while he did. He watched me move grey cans to the box and tape. He watched me scan. The belt stopped and went at my palm. He pushed his palm flat on the rubber edge of the bag platform. He lifted it. He turned it over and looked for what he expected to find. He didn't. He put it back down, this time with more intention. He lifted again. He frowned, pleased with the problem. It rained on Thursday, and the radio we keep at the service desk got a station from someone else's county. There was a story about weather, and a story about a school board, and a story about something else that was also weather. I have come to think that what we do here is post notices on the inside of our heads until there's no wall left, and then we call the remaining structure a person. I wiped the counter where the grey cans leave their rings with the chemical that is good for everything, and it made the smell that goes with a sense of control. The rings did not lift. A woman who got her hair done in a style that defies air put one grey can in the middle of the belt and nothing else. She watched me scan it and watched me stop. "Keep it," she said. I put it in the box, and she watched me do that too. "I had a feeling," she said, and the way she said it you could understand that a feeling might be a handshake she had taught herself. The bracelet in the drawer under the counter had moved. There were 2. There were 3. We had not counted these in. We had not assigned them a space. They made their own logic there in that dark. Now and then I would close the drawer hard and listen for them and hear the sound of plastic become a kind of knuckle. By Friday there were people who said, maybe it's a joke in the machine. And there were people who said, maybe it's an answer to a question we didn't ask. I took both as permission to behave the way I would have anyway. I boxed, I taped, I stacked. I tried not to look at the left-hand dock wall. There was a shape there now I didn't want to describe. A cardboard coupon, stand by the entrance, join our rewards, we make your points count, had a piece of tape loose at the corner. The tape fluttered against the cardboard and made a sound like a paper moth. I turned away from it to look somewhere clean, and my eyes went to lane 3 because that is where I was always meant to be, and the glass was so clean I could see the red grid make a ladder on my shirt again. I leaned without meaning to, so the line would hit a different stripe. At close, the driver parked without backing to the dock. He left the engine idling and stood on the blacktop with his hands at his sides, like I have stood many evenings when I cannot bring myself to be in any place where the ceiling assumes something of me. He looked at the wall. I tried not to. He held out his hand, palm up. I put the manifest in it, and he turned the paper over and handed it back to me. The back had the same line printed backward, a ghost print I always see on receipts and never read. It said, "You." The paper's heat felt like someone had just ironed it. I slept behind my own eyes and dreamed nothing. I woke with lines on my face from the pillow that looked like roads. I ran my finger along one and couldn't think how a road is built for the first time. I can only remember seeing them done again. Saturday, mid-shift, the line jumped to something new. Human remains. Recall was still the main thing the screen showed me, big and patient and not in a hurry. Under it, a secondary message, at source, apply bracelet. Another line under that, dock, left wall, staging. The letters did not blink, they held still. The belt hummed like a thing guarding an answer. I had never resented this place. It had never been a job I needed to forgive. Now I felt my jaw align with my teeth in a way that said I could hold anger if it was handed to me. I did not want anger. I wanted the checklist that would get me to 5. I put my hand in the drawer and took out a bracelet. The plastic was colder, like it had been near metal. I held it in my palm. My hand shook, but not the way a hand shakes when it's weak. It was a controlled little thing, like the way a person cries when they know they are being watched. And they are not ashamed of that, but they want to keep their nose from taking over the room. I put the bracelet in my apron pocket and went outside to smoke a thing I didn't have. I stood under the overhang and felt the drips find the back of my neck where my hair always forgets to be long, and used my shoulder to lean on not the wall, but air. "How's it going?" Jana said. coming out with the sort of open eyes that mean she saw too much earlier and is correcting for it. "You look off." "Just a minute," I said. "You need time," she said, and put a hand near my shoulder without touching and never moved it. "Take it on lunch." "I'll finish the lane," I said, "because sometimes the forms you obey are the only ones that keep you in the room." The line appeared for things it should not, and then didn't T appear when I thought it ought to, and then remembered and corrected itself. I tried to remember the opening day, the mayor's mouth open, the ribbon, the punch clock throwing that first minute. I told myself the lot numbers were a coincidence built on the brain's willingness to sort anything. I told myself the driver's gloves were just gloves, and that grey was the right color for a life that touches every place there is. I told myself the left-hand wall was a wall, and so what if it was darker? At 5, they asked for me at the dock. "Vendor pickup," the intercom chirped. The vendor was 2 men, or a man, and something else wearing a man's jacket. One wore a jacket that admitted its job. One wore clothes that didn't. The first took the boxes with the neatness of someone who believed in the way a pallet makes a day. The second pointed with 2 fingers to the wall. "Tag," he said. His voice had the timbre of someone who speaks to husbands. I didn't like it. "I run the front," I said. "I'm proud of this when I am off the clock and embarrassed by my pride when the clock is going. I'm not back of house." "Not a problem," he said, and I realized then how much I had wanted a problem. He set the bracelets on the work table we used to break boxes and stack hands of bananas and wait for the sugar from the fruit to make the surface sticky. He placed them one by one as if they were heavy and then pushed them gently so they aligned. They did, like they were magnets and the table was iron. I stood. My hand found the small of my back and made a fist and unfisted, which is how I've stood since I had the kind of job that needed you to hold yourself together to get a forklift under a perfect stack. I waited for someone to tell me what compliance should look like, and the 2 men did what everyone in authority wants you to do. They waited for me to tell myself. I moved the top 3 boxes from the dolly to the staging area the manifest had drawn for me and made a square that looked like care. I opened the accordion door of the box we keep gloves in and put on a pair that smelled faintly like lemons and like the hands of someone who likes the smell of lemons. And I took a bracelet and I pressed it against the left-hand wall at the height of my wrist, and I felt the brick under the paint, under the dust, under the air, and something warmed. The bracelet made a click, not mechanical. It read the wall, or the wall read it. The bracelet held itself there. It defied. "Again," the man said. "At source." I took another bracelet. My mouth was dry because the store air does that to you when you don't drink like humans. I pressed it to the wall. It clicked and held. I did this for as many bracelets as there were. I know you would like me to tell you how many. I can't. It felt like being asked how many lunches you have eaten while never looking at a clock. The left-hand wall made a pattern, and the pattern looked like the shape the driver's hand had made when he traced it the other night. I stood back and was ashamed, and the man nodded. "We'll speak to next of kin," he said, and looked down at my shoes like he was choosing something for himself. "No one," I said, and the word did a thing in my chest. "Not anymore." He wrote nothing down. He had never written. They loaded the boxes and shut the truck in a coordinate I can't write for you. Jana came and stood next to me because she knows a person can be in the same building with a friend and still feel they are outside. "Go home," she said. "I'm fine," I said. "Go home." She said, "Sleep." "I'll close," I said, but not to argue, to stay. Close was a checkout lane with nobody in it, and a floor that needed a hit of water, which we gave it, and an office that needed the day out of it, which I coaxed to happen by turning off the monitor 10 seconds before the computer asked me if I was sure. "Always," I said, and the screens gave me their black and glowed faintly anyway, the way a reader's nightlight does when it wants to see you dream. I walked home the long way, past the cannery that closed before the store opened, past the post office with the flag caught against the pole in a way that turns wind into a throat clearing. The stoplight at the town's only long intersection cycled. No cars. A man on a bicycle went through slow, like a person testing the idea that something other than cars will one day own this angle. The river's cough had collapsed into the steady breath of just being. The boil notice had been lifted. The sign had not. In my apartment, the fridge hummed its old forgiveness. The bathroom fan spoke, and then forgot, and then remembered. I sat at the kitchen table and laid the receipt on the wood. The pepper magnet had made a mark where it had lived, a faint circle that told you something had been there long enough to pretend it deserved the spot. The receipt had edges now, like a leaf dried in a book and then put back in a pocket. Bag separately, it said, next of kin notified. There was a number at the bottom I hadn't noticed before. It was the minute my punch card knows, printed in a font the printer saved for formalities. It looked like an invitation to a story I wasn't finished telling. I slept on the couch without meaning to. I woke to the noise of a compressor somewhere deciding whether to be a person. I reached for water and drank what air gives you when it has nothing else. I put my hand to my wrist. I could feel the ghosts of the bracelets, the absence of their presence. I held my breath, and the room got as small as it needed to be. When you walk in a store the next day, if you come and if you pick up something ordinary, because you are an ordinary person in a town that knows how to be many things but chooses ordinary, because it keeps you and you place your ordinary on lane 3 or 1 or 4, the numbers don't matter now, and the scanner sings its 5 notes, I will try not to think of them as a nursery rhyme for closing lids. If the line appears, and lately it appears for things it shouldn't know, I will lift your item with a thumb and forefinger and place it in a box and tape it neat. I will write words on the tape that let me feel like I have done my duty. I will calm my breath by listening to the pressure line in the copper pipe knock once and then again, and I will agree with it about how long days are. I will print a manifest and sign it in a hand I sometimes recognize and sometimes don a T. I will carry it to the dock. I will avoid looking at the left-hand wall. If, by accident or by some shape of a choice I can't own, I take off my jacket and my apron and stand there with just my shirt, I will feel the grid on my chest if I lean. I will reach into the drawer and there will be a bracelet and I will hold it and it will have weight. I will put my palm on the left-hand wall at the height they wanted, and I will feel the brick greet me, and the paint thank me, and the air hold itself steady, so it does not betray anyone. And then I will lower my hand, because lowering your hand is an act we can pretend is our own. I will go back to the front. I will stand under the polite light. I will ask you if you need stamps, or if you would like to sign up for rewards, and I will mean it because at this point the script is also me. If you hand me cash, I will count it with the same care I would apply to a brand new baby's toes. If you pay with a card and the machine says remove, I will watch you, and then I will look away because everyone deserves their own tiny privacy. You will push your cart away, the wheels complaining because they have learned our flaw. The truck will come, the driver will nod, the passenger will be there or won't. They will look at the wall that holds what we don't pack it any other place. The wall will hold, the bracelets will click, someone somewhere will read the line that says my name in the manifest and will make a note, maybe on paper, maybe inside, that is how we did it this time. You will go home, you will open a can, not grey or grey, and you will remember you cannot. You will make toast. You will butter it the way you have for 20 years. The butter will warm on the bread in a way that says heat is all anyone ever wanted from anyone. Your dog will be good. Your child will press a hand to the rubber edge of the table and lift and look for the ring, and it will not be there. I will lock the door at 10 after 9, because that is when the last person leaves, even if our hours say 10. And I will walk the aisles with my hand out like a person alone on the way to bed. I will count end caps. I will check the milk's dates. I will press a finger to a loaf to see if the air still lives in it. I will take the trash out past the dock and not look left. I will breathe. The thing that feels like an ending isn't one. It's a pause that thinks too much of itself. I will do this tomorrow, and some version of a tomorrow in which the wall is more wall, the bracelets are less, and the line on the scanner finds a different word to lay down, so people will keep coming for bread and hands and a place with a smell that makes them think their town means them. If you ask me now what the cans had in them, I can only tell you what the screen told me. If you ask me what remains, I will tell you what it always has: a job, a time, a brick that knows a hand. If you see me standing in the doorway of lane 3 with the red grid trying to pick a square on my chest to prefer, if you see me lean, know that I'm finding where to put the weight. If you see me at the dock with my hand near the wall and the bracelets holding there like a field of small moons, know that I am not naming anything for you. I'm not the kind of person who can pronounce a thing into being less true by calling it out. The air at the store, on a night when the coolers behave and the fans decide to be machines instead of men, is perfect. I stand in it, and I let it tell me what it can. I walk home under a sky that uses our town as a place to pass through. I sit at my table. My name is a line on a slip, printed from a machine that eats paper and gives worse back. The refrigerator hums like it always has. I put the pepper magnet on the corner, and the paper stays. I lay my wrist on the wood where the bracelet would fall if gravity learned manners. I wake with a mark from the edge of the table. I press my fingers to it, and then I don't. The store opens at 7. I will be there. Lane 3 will sing. The belts will be belts. The driver will nod. The wall will remember. I will move what needs moving onto a dolly and stack it in a square and write words with a black marker. And the letters will lean the way they always have. And if my letters lean more than usual, no one will say anything. We are a polite town. We have boxes, we have tape, we have a little chime of 5 notes that plays when the machine sees what it wants. We have a rule now about bracelets. We have the thing we always had, a line for names, printed small and patient, the sort of print that looks good in bad light. If I am at source, I will tag directly. If I am not, I will bring the box to the dock, and I will stand with my hands where I keep them when I do not want to be anything except what my job tells me. If someone says, "Why you?" I will say, "Because I was here." If someone says, "What is inside?" I will say, "What we had." The day you come and put your can down, gray or green or a different color we haven't met yet, I will look up and see you, and if I know your name, I will say it. And if I don't, I will say sir or ma'am or nothing at all, and the machine will sing, and I will be ready, and whatever we are calling it now will be written where it can be read, and we will do what we have been doing. We will bag separately. We will notify next of kin, or someone will, somewhere, in a room where bracelets click into walls and then refuse to fall. I will not be there. I will be right here. I will be right here until I am not. When I am not, you will not feel a change in the price of the milk. The clock by the office will keep cheating by a minute. The copper line will thud twice when the pressure changes. The scanner will sing 5 notes that used to mean yes. The dock will hold. The driver will nod. Jana will say, "Drink water," and hand a bottle to a kid who looks like he fell asleep on a couch and woke up an adult in a store. A box will say, "Returns, emergency," because that is what we call things when we want to seem serious. The community will put another advisory on smaller paper. The walls will not move. The wall will remember. The list will be longer than it was. My name will be a line printed backward on the back of a page, and if you hold it up to a mirror, it will read right. If that comforts you, if you own a mirror, if there is light. If this story lands with you, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who enjoys quiet, literary horror. Comments are open. Tell me your favorite image or line.